This is the third symposium I'm attending, and I was involved in the planning of all three as a member of the steering group. And I think that as a concept, we've learnt a lot along the way, and of course the significance and the importance of the Emerging Market Symposium has been dramatically vindicated by what has happened with the emerging markets as a result of the global financial crisis. The concept of emerging markets is loosely defined, and I think what I at least have learnt over the period of planning for these and then attending these seminars is a much more concrete sense of what it means to call an economy an emerging market. And so I think that both defining what is specific about an emerging market is something that's become a lot clearer, and as it were having and creating a space which brings practitioners and academics from the emerging markets together with some leading scholars, and that is the advantage of having it in Oxford, has been a very exciting process. We've learnt a lot along the way about creating a degree of comfort amongst the participants, a complete lack of hierarchy, openness. So I think both in terms of the content and in terms of the style, there's been enormous progress made over three seminars. We now have both enough confidence, enough experience that we know we have a story to tell. And my own recommendation to other members of the steering group this morning was that we should now package what we've learned. Of course, we are very careful about not providing attribution to individuals here, because maintaining a level of comfort is very important. But so I think that what for me would be a kind of an ambitious but achievable goal is that in the way that, the World Economic Forum, Davos, people associate that with a certain class of issues. Of course, it's a much, much bigger venture, that we will become a kind of a go-to place. And I think that that is how the ideas will spread, but there's also a desire to do outreach and actually interact with policymakers on the basis of what we've learned. I think what we are able to provide decision makers, policymakers, policy analysts is a sense of a vetted consensus, a consensus that brings together practitioners from both dominantly from the emerging markets, but also from academia, and which is not contaminated by national power politics or anything like that. So in time, I'm hoping that that will provide us a degree of credibility. And I think it's important that we stick to our remit, which is to focus on what we call microeconomic problems, not worry about inflation and exchange rates, a lot of that going on anyway, but really focus on what it takes for these countries to realize their considerable potential. You read in the headlines that virtually all kinds of corporates now think their future is going to be in the emerging markets. But what do they know about the emerging markets? How do they make transparent the debates and dilemmas? I would have thought that by supporting, without in some ways overwhelming, the Emerging Market Symposium, this would be a pretty good bet. I mean, this is where the growth is going to be, yet for most major corporates, what goes on within these societies and economies, the very real tensions, issues, debates, is not easily made accessible to them. And I think that the conference itself, which I hope will remain, in that sense, under the Chatham House rule, but then all that emerges out of it, these are ways to invest in not only sound policy, but greater transparency for markets that are going to be really critical for most corporates going ahead.